The Yakuza series is very well known for its heavy focus on great music, and while this video was initially intended to be a little more of a troll towards a certain, pretty well-known YouTuber in the Yakuza sphere that clickbaits incessantly, and I have a teeny tiny bit of a problem with constantly changing his titles and thumbnails like a big-ass fuck, I figured, instead, since I'm going to be talking about Kiwami 3's soundtrack soon, I might as well give a little context for my thoughts on Yakuza's music as a whole. That said, you know me, I can't make a short video to save my life. So, since I'm gonna do a little more than give some empty words about each game's OST before choosing the most basic bitch picks for my favorite tracks from each game, I'm gonna limit this discussion to 1 through 3. Cuts a lengthy chapter out of that future video, and it gives me a chance to gush over one of my favorite parts of this series. I'll be talking about way too many pieces of music to give you snippets of all of them, so feel free to just pause the video to take a look at any tracks I mention by name. They're all worth listening to, even the ones I don't mention. I'm of the firm opinion that this series didn't have any bad songs for a good long while into its tenure. Starting at the start, Yakuza 1 has one of the most consistently good soundtracks of the whole series. Of course, this being the first game, its soundtrack is pretty small and pretty confined to one genre, that being rock music. Even so, we can already see how open the series was to exploring other genres beyond bog-standard rock music just by glancing beyond the literal first piece of music you'll hear after beginning gameplay. Songs like Unrest and Blow to the City eschew guitars for a greater focus on a noir-inspired, piano-centric atmosphere, and others like Sing and Bass and Clear Starlit Sky lean into the game's jazz inspiration. Even looking at the rock tracks themselves, a lot of them make heavy use of hip-hop-inspired percussion and vocal sampling, to the point that I'd go so far as to call some songs, such as Pray Me, something closer to nu metal. And when it comes to my favorites, though, I'm going to give a top 3, because choosing just one is basically impossible. The first, one of very few songs on this OST that wasn't composed by Hidenori Shoji, is Son of a Gun by Keitaro Hanada, a prime example of how tight a grasp the series had on its musical direction from the get-go, even when it was containing itself to a rock-centric direction. Not to mention, it houses my personal favorite guitar solo in the series. The second song I'd like to highlight is one I mentioned before, Sing and Bass by Hidenori Shoji. Very classy, very smooth, gives the saxophone some of the spotlight without forcing it into a battle theme. And any chance to appreciate a non-battle theme in this series is a win in my book. The last one I'd like to mention, partly because I just don't think many people have heard it in the first place, Poison Pill, also by Hidenori Shoji. That's going to become a pattern, be ready to hear that name a lot. This one is a credits track. It plays after Amazing Grace wraps up, and it works pretty well as a little summary of what this game's soundtrack was going for. Powerful guitars held aloft by some drum loops, sirens, and funky electronics. If someone were curious as to whether they'd enjoy the first game's soundtrack, this song is the perfect litmus test to see if it's up their alley. Then, at least for me, it hits all the right notes. Though while I wouldn't say I personally like it as much as the first, both as a game and as a soundtrack, it's undeniable that Yakuza 2 is where things got kicked into high gear. The limited genre experimentation we saw in the first game has now become a much more critical focus of this game's music, to the point that it's much harder to call this OST as a whole any one thing. It's honestly more than we would see from most of the future installments too, thanks to the numerous guest composers brought on for this game and this game only. There's stuff on here ranging from grunge rock to lounge jazz to borderline metal to nu metal to freeform instrumental to gentle weeping piano passages. And that makes it really difficult to say with confidence what my favorite track from this OST is. So I'm gonna give you a top 5 in no particular order. Push Me Underwater by Hidenori Shoji is a prime example of what a good street battle theme sounds like. Catchy, impactful, hits every time and never gets old. Not to mention the unorthodox percussion that this series loves dabbling in from time to time. And since Sotenbori is where all the jazz elements got focused, this track gets to focus extra hard on all of the grungy parts of the first game's soundtrack. Okay, Google calls this one Kasuke-en, but then it also speaks U-en, so whatever. Ghost Flame by Norihiko Hibino and Takahiro Izutani, the precursor to the Takumi line of songs. Easily the most distinct song in the game, lends a mysterious and ethereal air to Komaki. It really makes you feel like you're learning an ancient martial art from its last ancient master. Beast itself by Hideki Sakamoto, the superior remix of Evil itself, if for no other reason than because it equates Hayashi with two very scary tigers. Aside from that, though, this song takes a bit less overproduced of an approach, kicking the drum loops and sampled rap verses for more abstract vocals and some strings with Asian flair, for lack of a better descriptor. A Scattered Moment by Hidenori Shoji, the most subversive moment in series history. The huge build-up to this final encounter only to get this gorgeous and serene piano melody. This is a step further than For Whose Sake aiming for sorrowful over cinematic, and it's all the more powerful for it. Top 5 final boss themes right here, I don't make the rules. To round things out, probably not a pick anyone was expecting, Silent Night, Holy Night, arranged by Eri Kawai, returning from the first game's rendition of Amazing Grace. Skipping over the fact that this is easily the best rendition of the song I've heard in my life, as well as its personal importance to me, This is one of the many parts of Yakuza 2 that makes it, in my opinion, a perfect sequel. Building off the thematic relevance of Amazing Grace, a song which spoke to Kiryu's being saved by finding a new reason to live and protecting Haruka, Silent Night caps off this story as one about Kiryu's birth anew. The whole game is spent with him fighting his many lingering traumas, survivor's guilt, and his insatiable need to prove himself, this drive to fight the strongest person he could find. Upon confronting all of these things at the top of Kamuro Hills, he embraces Kaoru, fully prepared to die in a violent explosion, but he's instead met with silence. Not to say there wasn't a death. In truth, the man who ascended the tower died with Ryuji. The one who descends with a newfound love for Kaoru and life itself is brand new. And there isn't a better song to embody this journey, not to mention abide by the Christmas setting, than Silent Night. Not to mention, unlike Amazing Grace, this one actually incorporates guitars into it, so by that metric alone, it's the better credits theme. Sure as shit works better than It's sort of weird to think that this eclectic assortment of musical ideas would be shaved down and focused into the Yakuza 3 soundtrack. Especially since it wasn't. See, like many things in this series, Kenzan is the missing link. Those familiar with its spiritual successor, Ishin, might assume that this game puts a similarly heavy emphasis on orchestral tracks with a specialization in Japanese instrumentation. Those people wouldn't be completely wrong. Some tracks do try to emulate the time period, but those are mostly contained to the side content. The ones you'll hear during normal gameplay are dead focused on rock and electronics, but the soundtrack isn't just resting on its laurels here. In fact, there's one major factor that sets this soundtrack apart from the rest of the series: its unique emphasis on vocal samples. Where in other games a song without vocal samples is hardly noteworthy, it's difficult to ignore when songs like Dive to the Mess or 4-Will opt out of using them entirely. On the opposite side of things, one contribution this game made to every soundtrack going forward was to the rock side of things, specifically the guitar. 1 and 2 mostly saw similar guitar tones across both games, with some minor alterations for the odd song here and there, but Kenzan once again takes it to another level. I lack the knowledge on how a guitar works to confidently say what and how is going on to make these sound so different, but I can at least say that this game manages to make much cleaner and much grimier tones than the PS2 games aimed for, and the diversity in sound for this one instrument would open up so many musical possibilities moving forward into the series. I keep looking around the soundtrack to see what would make a good example of this diversity in sound, but it's genuinely such a crucial part of the Kenzan listening experience that you can find it on basically any song that includes a guitar in the first place. That said, when it comes to favorites, I'm going to give a top 3 for this one, like the first game. I really don't know why I felt like I could choose a single favorite for any of these. I'm not built for that. Anyway, starting things off, Brand New Japan-esque by Hidenori Shoji. This is also an important beginning for the series, the first sub-story gag theme. That's right, before Dirty Boy, before D2A, we had this fantastic track that balanced upbeat, energetic guitars and vocal samples with setting-appropriate flourish. Lives up to its title effortlessly. Talking of, my next pick is Yamato Buto Kyoku, or Yamato Dance Suite, also by Hidenori Shoji. This was one of the first dedicated long battle themes in the series. That's right, there weren't many of those in the PS2 games. This song leans a little more into the period sound, with a wooden flute gliding over a slick and catchy electronic dance beat. In addition to paving the way for later long battle themes, I appreciate this song for being relatively low-key in its tone and instrumentation. It's pretty easy for Yakuza songs to fall into a pattern of empty hype and formulaic structure, so having one of the earliest examples of a dedicated song like this also avoid those pitfalls is especially commendable. I like the chance to feel something other than general badassery during gameplay. Final pick, and one of the most unique songs, not just in the game, but the series as a whole. Swordplay. Fuck you, it's Dull Color Fangs, I'm a basic bitch! You listen to this and tell me you're not picking it! Anyway, yeah. Chunkiest guitars in the game, nastiest electronics, hardest hitting vocal samples, tempo is perfectly matched for the pace of combat. This is a perfect song. What Poison Pill is for Yakuza 1, this song is for Kenzan. And soon enough, once that English patch is released, you lot who haven't played the game for yourself yet will be able to do more than just listen to the soundtrack and watch no damages. This is a very special game, and I'm excited for the community at large to experience it. At long last, we arrive at the final stop of this little guided tour through Yakuza's musical origins. Yakuza 3 took the more focused direction Kenzan was moving in, and reinserted some of that characteristic genre diversity that made the PS2 games so stand out. The result was a happy medium between 2 and Kenzan, a soundtrack with all of the strengths of the previous games and all of the innovation inherent to being the fourth entry in the series. Plenty of guitars and electronics with a newfound emphasis on keyboards, be they pianos or organs. In addition, the vocal samples remain commonplace, though this time they take a role more akin to ad-libs than crucial pieces of a song's rhythm. In terms of a top 3, you know I had to start it off with Ryukyu Humming by Hidenori Shoji. Pick the right day of the week, I'll tell you this is my favorite battle theme in the series. It's a tough competition for sure, but between the upbeat organ hits, incredible guitar riffs, tropical percussion, and celebratory vocal samples, it's got more than enough in its corner. It's a song that enthusiastically welcomes you back to Okinawa every time you return there, and how could you not be happy to be back with jams like this? For number 2, another Demi-World by Hiroyushi Kato, the Avengers theme, or the Reapers theme for the remastered folks, takes a much darker direction with its instrumentation. Some of my favorite guitars and percussion are on this track. Combine that with the return of a fully sampled rap verse, and we're getting some real evil itself energy with this one. Very fitting for an organization built of Tojo traders, especially when their leader is another of the most iconic characters from the PS2 era that made a very niche appearance in the PS3 games before 5. My third and final pick is difficult to make. Yakuza 3 might be my favorite soundtrack in the series, and beyond loving every entry on this list, I have so many that I want to mention just on the off chance that it means more people go and appreciate what I feel is the most underappreciated soundtrack in the series. I can understand why it wouldn't stick out very much to most players in hindsight, especially when a lot of new fans are experiencing it not after the first 3 games in the series, but the 3 games a new fan is most likely to start out with. A synth-heavy track list that doesn't really even work as a send-up to 80s music, a collection of remixes that forego the original music direction to make every song sound like more of Yakuza 0, and a soundtrack so confused and lacking in remixes that it frankly doesn't belong in a remake of one of the most musically inspired and passionate games in the series. God forbid someone goes by the Sega recommended perfect jumping in point, quote-unquote, because at that point, any sense of musical cohesion is basically thrown out the window. So I guess my final pick is the rest of Yakuza 3's soundtrack. Just all of it. If you're someone who didn't find it very special or interesting back when you first played the game, please give it another shot now. Especially now that you have more context for how it came to be in the first place. And even if you don't like it any more than you did the first time, like all of Yakuza 3, it's worth giving a second chance. Plus, now for some people, they've forced it into the full series collection, so this may be the cheapest way to experience a part of the original Yakuza 3. And that's where we're going to wrap things up today. In the future, I'd love to continue this through the rest of the series, but for the moment, I have too much on my plate to comfortably say it'll happen soon. Also, you may be surprised at the number of songs from 3 not being directly discussed in this video, especially since they were recently remixed. That was on purpose. Soon enough, they will be talked about. So stay tuned for my first official video about Kiwami 3, the finished product, as opposed to Kiwami 3, the unreleased clusterfuck that I knew from day one would be an irredeemable pile of dog shit. In the meantime, though, a special thanks to the patrons with the patience of saints. Jestby, Hashbear, Cohen, and Loki. And if you really are patient like them and also like what I make, feel free to hop on over and peruse my wares. And to everyone watching, I hope you have a good day. Take care of yourself.